Welcome back. This is the age of the internet, and for most of the global newspaper industry, that means trouble. The World Association of Newspapers reports that in the European Union over the past 5 years, circulation figures for paid newspapers are down more than 5%. It's a similar story in the US. Now compare that to India, where over the same 5-year period, newspaper sales are up over 50%. Advertising revenues up by 85%. India now has more daily newspapers than any other country, including China. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi reports from Mumbai on India's newspaper boom and the growing pains that come with it.
It's 1 a.m. and all over India, printing presses are at work. They're rolling out copies of over 2,000 daily newspapers in at least 15 different languages. In India, newspapers have a vast and growing potential readership of over 333 million people. That's more than the size of the population of the United States.
Every street is paved with gold. So I guess India, in terms of print media, is like this, where every city, every single city in India is a potential city for a newspaper growth.
Circulation figures in India are impressive. The biggest selling English language paper, The Times of India, sells nearly 8 million copies a day. And the country's largest selling paper, the Hindi Dainik Jagran, sells a staggering 21 million copies every day. Every morning, hundreds of thousands of papers are delivered here to Mumbai's Dadar depot. These are intended for distribution to one part of the city. So it's little wonder that Indian publishers are so optimistic about this market. 65% of India's adult population is literate, and of them, only 1 out of 3 reads a newspaper. Now that's a market you'd want to get into. This year alone, India has seen the launch of 8 new newspapers. This market began its phenomenal growth back in 1991, when India liberalized its economy. That triggered a boom in the country's huge and literate middle classes. The newspaper markets really exploded when the Times of India decided to expand its readership by cutting prices to as low as 1 rupee. That's just 3 cents.
Newspaper prices plummeted to 1 rupee a copy. The cost of production was, say, about 15 rupees, but you were getting it at 1/15th the price. So there was a huge circulation boom. Single newspaper households became multiple newspaper households. And the Indian language households, they also converted to English reading households in the sense that they started getting English language newspapers.
There's tons of stuff in English, but it's the non-English press that's driving print media's growth. There are papers in Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, Bengali. Newspapers are keen to get their inky fingerprints on unexplored small-town markets, and the best way for them to do this is to publish in the local vernacular. For their new readers, the newspaper boom has been empowering.
It's made very ordinary Indians into newsmakers. It's shining the light into civic breakdowns and failures in small towns, which never made news.
I think print has realized something very interesting, which television doesn't have, which that print is fundamentally a local medium. Print knows its neighborhood.
You find that there is a lot more accountability as a result of papers going very local and getting readers and getting ordinary people to talk about their problems and what they face in a day-to-day kind of situation. Quality of education, quality of roads, the quality of governance. It's all coming much more under scrutiny because simply there is a lot more press at all levels.
It's not all good news, though. Driving the expansion of the Indian press are increasingly powerful advertisers who are beginning to flex their muscles and influence content. Film news sells, so film news is printed. Gloss sells, so papers are made glossier and more colorful. But what does this mean for newspaper journalism?
More and more, it's not information being delivered to the audience, but an audience being delivered to the advertiser. That's the basic mission of the media in India.
That new gatekeepers are primarily the advertisers, advertising agencies, the market researchers, the media planners, and of course the public relations people. They decide, they set the priorities. Influencing is the name of the game, not enlightening as it was when the editor was leading.
There is less space for journalism now. There's less space in terms of actual, getting stories published the way you want to. journalists increasingly are becoming like lions outside their organization and lambs inside. They are increasingly more and more willing to submit to the commercial and editorial decisions that may do extreme violence to the copy that they have filed, So increasingly that compliance with commercial imperatives is becoming part of the profession.
Call it dumbing down. Call it the confluence of editorial and commercial efforts. Increased advertising in papers has meant more sales. But for this newspaper vendor, it's also meant a lot more supplements for him to stuff into each paper each morning at no extra earning.
ये सप्लीमेंट जो रहता है ये कंपनी को न्यूज ऐड मिलता है तो ये लोग ये सप्लीमेंट में डालते हैं और हम लोग के माथे पे मार देते हैं तो ये भरना पड़ता है पहले गिराक लोग वही देखते हैं अरे 46 पेज है अंदर का किधर है कंपनी वाले तो ऐसा अलग से बेचते हैं बिल्कुल और गिराक लोग को क्या 200 रुपये में पेपर मिलता है पूरे साल भर का और आपको कितना मिलता है हम लोग को खाली 2 रुपये में पेपर मिलता है एक फ्रूट वाला होएगा तो वो फल का भाव बड़ा चढ़ा के बेच सकता है.
But with low prices having become the norm in India, it looks like advertisers will continue to be amongst the most influential people in India's newspaper industry. Bharat Bhushan, who edits one of the country's newest city papers, says this isn't such a bad thing.
Of course, we are all driven by advertisers. Where does my salary come from? It doesn't come from the subscription of this paper. It will come from the advertising revenue that we get. And that is what keeps our press free. Because if you don't get advertising revenue, then you've seen countries where people are dependent on governments. We're not dependent on the government to either launch the paper, to sell the paper, or to pay the salaries of our journalists.
But despite this freedom, there remains the journalist's lament.
Today, the dilemma is between the quality and the quantity. We are at the peak of the quantity. Everybody is after the quantity, not so much the quality, or so much on the concern. That's not the pursuit. The pursuit is short-term and immediate.
Quality versus quantity. Editorial versus advertising. The circulation figures are soaring, but the way this story reads, India's newspaper explosion hasn't reached its full journalistic potential yet.
More Global Village voices now and their take on the growth sector that is the Indian newspaper industry.
Journalism in India is being driven by the corporate interests, especially in the post-90s environment. And it's being worsened by the fact that media schools are focusing entirely on the production craft rather than the ethics and the philosophy of life, which ought to be the guiding and the starting point for any kind of a journalistic inquiry.
Well, my guess is that the boom will carry on for at least another decade before the inevitable crash, because there has to be a point beyond which we can't keep having new titles every few months. There has to be a freeze.
There is more maturity in the Indian papers. They have also gone in the interior, in the rural areas. They are not confined to the big cities only for the rich people. And they are covering those stories, their stories.
Finally, there's always room at the Listening Post for a special seasonal message from a world leader, or even two, especially if it's satire and it appears on the World Wide Web. This one's vintage, harking back to a time of special relationships. Comes from a nifty little website you might want to check out called worldleaders.com. It's our internet video of the week. We'll see you next time at the Listening Post.
Hi.
Hello.
Now, this is the season of Christmas cheer, a time to be with friends and family. But there are people who've lost loved ones in conflicts around the world, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon.
France?
No, there's no war in France.
Really?
No.
Well, we need to fix that.
Anyway, to all those who've lost loved ones in these wars, which, you know...
we didn't start.
We'd like to say, have a happy Christmas.
Are you going to kiss me now?
Wait till they've gone. Okay.
You have the worst teeth I've ever seen in a man.